Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. It started with a trembling FaceTime call. My wife, panicked, whispering, "They're in the house. Not burglars, not police. The HOA. Badges, threats, and boxes on the lawn." By the time I got home, they were going to learn one thing. You don't pick a fight with a Marine. They say no good story ever starts with a salad. Well, mine started with a phone call I'll never forget. And it came when I was 150 miles away from home, halfway through a coffee I never finished. It was a Wednesday morning, a little after 10. I was in Columbus, Georgia, wrapping up a quick 2-day logistics consult at Fort Benning. Smooth assignment, no hiccups. I had a return ticket booked for the following morning and plans to spend the weekend back in South Carolina, grilling ribs with the kids and working on a shed project. Life was steady, the way I like it. Then my phone lit up. FaceTime. Rachel. The first thing I saw wasn't her face. It was the chaos behind her. My wife's voice was shaking, barely audible over the yelling in the background. "Clayton, they're in the house." Her eyes were wide, red, panic-stricken. I sat bolt upright, the hotel bed forgotten beneath me. "Rachel, what are you talking about?" Behind her, a man's voice barked something I couldn't make out. Then a woman, sharp, commanding, nasal. "You have 1 hour to vacate. You are in violation." "Who the hell is that?" I demanded. "They said they're from the HOA," she cried. "They have badges, uniforms. They just walked in through the door like they owned the place. They said we don't have the right to live here, that we're trespassing on HOA land." That's when I heard the thump. Furniture, maybe a chair. The screen jolted as Rachel turned the phone toward the hallway. A heavy-set guy in a khaki polo was standing over one of our moving boxes, flipping it open. Another one was unplugging the baby monitor. "Jesus Christ," I muttered, already grabbing my jeans. "Rachel, are the kids okay?" "They're outside. I got them out back when they started shouting. But one of them, he said if we didn't leave, they'd call Child Protective Services." I stopped cold for half a second, phone clutched to my ear. Then I moved. I was dressed and packed in under a minute. By the time I reached the parking lot, I was calling Marcus, ex-Marine like me, now head of a private security outfit in Charleston. He picked up on the first ring. "Need boots at my place. Rachel and the kids are in danger. Unlawful entry by HOA goons. Might get dirty." He didn't ask questions. "ETA 45 minutes. I'm bringing backup." Next call. Lance, lawyer, ex-JAG, currently halfway through a bourbon-fueled sabbatical. "Bring your camera and your legal mind. We're going scorched earth." "Been waiting for this day," he replied. "Tell Rachel to breathe. I'll be there before you are." Last call. Evan, retired SEAL and full-time drone junkie. "Eyes in the sky?" I asked. "I'll have thermal, wide-angle, and recording ready." "You want live feed to command center?" "Make it sexy." I was already on the I-185, gunning it toward South Carolina. 2 hours on paper, but I had no intention of driving like a civilian. In the car, I tried calling our private security company, Sentinel Response. They'd installed the panic button system 2 years ago when someone tried to cut the backyard fence. "Your signal was received," the operator said, her voice too calm. "But HOA security flagged it as internal jurisdiction. We were told not to deploy." I nearly crushed the steering wheel. "Told by whom?" "Cypress Grove Homeowners Association. Sentinel is under my contract. My name's on the deed. That house is not HOA." "I understand, sir, but the override code came from an authorized community administrator. There's nothing we can—" I hung up. The blood in my head roared like a jet engine. I knew Cypress Grove. They were the kind of HOA that mandated lawn stripe direction and once fined a man for painting his shutters the wrong shade of blue. But they didn't own our house. My property sat outside their jurisdiction. I made damn sure of that when we bought it. It was literally on the other side of a fence line from their community border. No covenant, no contract, no authority. So how the hell were they inside my house? I kept driving. 90, then 95. I was swallowing up miles, road signs blurring by. I didn't bother with speed limits. I wanted to be there yesterday. Somewhere along the way, Evan sent me a text. "Got thermal on site. 3 adults inside, kids outside. 1 adult possibly armed, baton or tool. Feed uploading to cloud." Another came from Marcus. "I'll intercept on north approach. Block exit if they try to run. Lance is 5 minutes behind me." In the distance, I saw the exit sign for Cypress Grove. I didn't slow down. I took the service road like a missile, shot past the community welcome sign, and veered toward my own private drive. Gravel path, no gate, no HOA signage. As I made the turn, something caught my eye. The house across the street. A man, stocky, beard, ball cap, stood on the porch, holding a phone. I'd seen him before. New renter. Said he was in tech. We hadn't talked much. Just waved once or twice. He wasn't waving now, just watching. My tires crunched over the gravel. I felt the pulse in my jaw. The house came into view. My house. My front lawn had boxes scattered on it. Our porch chairs, the ones I built with my daughter last summer, were knocked over. And parked right in the middle of my driveway was a white pickup truck with a gaudy vinyl decal on the door. Cypress Grove HOA Enforcement Unit. The moment I saw it, I knew someone was going to regret waking the Marine in me. I didn't remember getting out of the car. 1 second I was behind the wheel, the next I was on my feet, moving fast, gravel crunching under boots, every muscle awake, every nerve locked onto the scene in front of me. My house, our house, looked like a crime scene. The HOA pickup was still in the driveway, engine idling like it had all the right in the world to be there. The tailgate was down. Our kids' toys were scattered beside it. One of our moving boxes had been dumped open on the lawn. Rachel's framed photos, my son's old baseball glove, even one of my military service awards face down in the dirt. And then I saw him, one of the HOA guys, mid-40s, buzz cut, beefy in a way that suggested more beer than brawn, was standing over Rachel. She had her back against the porch railing, arms up in a protective half gesture. He was pointing a finger in her face and barking something. I couldn't hear it clearly over the blood rushing in my ears. That's when he raised his hand. I moved before my brain finished processing. Somewhere behind me, tires screeched. 2 more black SUVs pulling in. My crew was right on time. I didn't stop to explain. "Step the hell away from my wife!" My voice cracked like a rifle shot. The guy turned, startled, hand still midair. Rachel's eyes widened. Relief and terror, all tangled up. The guy stammered, "You're not authorized to be on—" "Finish that sentence," I warned, coming up the steps like a freight train. "Please, give me a reason." Evan was already in motion, drone in the air, buzzing above us with its camera trained and live streaming. Lance emerged with a body cam strapped to his chest and a folder of legal documents under his arm. Marcus blocked the drive with his vehicle and stood by the HOA truck, hand resting casually near the holster on his hip, just enough to send a message. The man in front of me stepped back, eyes darting. I kept going. Rachel collapsed into my chest the moment I reached her. I held her tight, whispered, "I've got you," then turned my attention back to the intruders. That's when I heard the voice I'd hoped I wouldn't have to. "Mr. Burns." I turned. Karen Delmeyer stood at the top of the walkway like she was expecting a round of applause. Navy blazer, HOA badge clipped like it meant something. Short blonde bob that didn't move an inch. Her smile was tight, smug, and about 2 decibels from a lawsuit. "You're trespassing," she said, like I was the one breaking into her property. "Karen," I replied flatly, "get off my land." "This is Cypress Grove jurisdiction now," she insisted, waving a thick document like a holy relic. "As of last week, your parcel was included in the updated boundary incorporation. You've failed to comply with HOA residency standards. We have full authority to—" A neighbor's voice cut through like a machete. "That's a lie, Karen. It was Jeremy Wells, old school, Vietnam vet, lived 2 doors down for 20 years. He stood at the edge of my lawn, arms folded, voice carrying like a drill sergeant's. I looked up the plats last night when you told me this crap was legal. This property's never been part of Cypress Grove. Not in 2 decades. You're making this up." Karen's smile faltered, only for a moment, but it was there. I turned back to her. "You have no legal basis to be here. This is private property. You entered without permission. You threatened my wife. You moved our belongings. That's criminal trespass, unlawful eviction attempt, possibly attempted assault." One of the goons, the one who'd raised his hand, tried to look tough. "We were following orders." "Great," Lance said, stepping forward. "Then you'll all be equally liable." He handed one of the men a copy of a cease and desist order, hastily prepared, but signed by a magistrate, thanks to Lance's connections and some well-placed urgency. Karen scoffed, snatching the document and barely looking at it. "You think you can intimidate us with your little veteran club? This is a matter of community governance." "You broke into a house, Karen," Marcus said coolly. That's not governance. That's a felony. Rachel spoke up then, her voice still shaky but stronger than before. She said she was going to call child services if we didn't leave. That hit like a brick. I turned to Karen. Did you seriously threaten to weaponize CPS? She didn't answer, just pressed her lips into a line and looked at the guy beside her, the buzz-cut enforcer. He looked back like maybe this wasn't what he signed up for. That's when Evan's drone buzzed lower, hovering above Karen's head like a mechanical wasp. She glanced up, eyes narrowing. "Are you recording this?" she snapped. "Oh, Karen," Evan replied from behind his console. "We've been recording since before you pulled into the driveway. You're in 4K, sweetheart." She didn't like that. "Pack it up," she barked to her lackeys. "Now." "Nope," I said. "No one's going anywhere. You're staying right here until the sheriff gets here. Already called." Karen turned toward her truck, but Marcus took a step forward, not blocking her, just present. Just a wall in the wrong place at the wrong time. "You don't get to walk away from this one," I said. "Not today." The sheriff's cruiser pulled up exactly 24 minutes after the call. I know, because I watched the second hand on my watch like a sniper waiting for green light. The tension in the yard was thick enough to cut with a cawbar. Karen and her little cosplay Gestapo stood stiffly near their pickup, arms folded, doing their best impression of legitimate authority. Rachel was still shaken, but she'd retreated inside with the kids and locked the door behind her. The first deputy out was Lieutenant Barrows, lean, early 50s, the kind of guy who looked like he didn't put up with HOA drama on a good day. And today was definitely not a good one. He took one look at the boxes on my lawn, then turned his gaze to the damage around the doorframe. His lips thinned. "Someone want to explain to me why a family was forcibly removed from their home this morning without a court order?" he asked dryly. Karen stepped forward like she was about to accept a ribbon. "Lieutenant Barrows, this property was incorporated into the Cypress Grove HOA district last week. The owners have failed to comply with the established—" Barrows cut her off with a raised hand. "Do you have a warrant, court order, sheriff's notice, anything legal authorizing entry?" Karen pulled out the same stack of papers she'd been waving around earlier, still clinging to it like a damn talisman. "This document outlines the jurisdictional incorporation authorized by Municipal Code 8.44. The community board voted unanimously." "Let me see that." Barrows took the packet, flipped through it for exactly 15 seconds, and then handed it off to his partner, a younger deputy with reading glasses and the patience of a man who's seen way too many bored housewives play lawyer. They both looked at each other, then at Karen. "This document," Barrows said slowly, "is not a legal incorporation. It's a proposed boundary draft, unfiled, uncertified, and more importantly, it uses a template from the old county charter. The logo alone is 3 years out of date." Karen blinked. "You've also listed the parcel number wrong," the younger deputy added. "This address is specifically designated as not within HOA control. There's a record of the exemption in the property archive dated 6 years ago." I stepped forward then, pulling up a scanned copy of my property deed on my phone. "Want to see my title again, Lieutenant? It includes the HOA opt-out clause. I made damn sure of it before we bought." Barrows gave me a nod. "I believe you." Karen looked like a pressure cooker with a broken release valve. She turned to the buzz-cut enforcer. "They told me it was finalized. I was told we had jurisdiction." "Told by whom?" Barrows asked. Karen didn't answer. Meanwhile, Lance was busy handing over copies of everything we had, from the video footage to the printed screenshots of the security company's refusal to respond to the panic alarm. "This is going to be relevant," he said, "because Sentinel Response failed to honor a life safety contract. My client activated the panic system. It was manually suppressed." Barrows raised an eyebrow. "Suppressed by whom?" "Dispatch supervisor," I said. "Guy named James Lennox. We traced it. He received a direct wire transfer for $3,000 2 days ago from a shell company linked to Cypress Grove HOA, listed under Community Infrastructure Services." Barrows exhaled through his nose. "You telling me HOA bribed private security to ignore a distress signal?" Lance smiled thinly. "I'm telling you, we have proof they did." At that point, I saw it. The moment Karen realized the ground under her was gone. Not just shaky, gone. She opened her mouth like she was going to protest, but no sound came out. Rachel stepped outside then, slowly, holding her phone. "I recorded everything," she said, "from the moment they forced their way in. Audio and video, And the moment she said she'd call CPS on us if we didn't leave. Karen turned toward her, fury and fear wrestling on her face. That was a warning, not a threat. No, I said coldly. That was coercion, on top of unlawful entry, intimidation, and possibly attempted abduction if you were planning to hand our kids over to authorities under false pretenses. Let's calm it down, Barrows muttered, though his eyes never left Karen. He radioed in for an investigator. Another unit was already en route. Karen's officers were starting to sweat. One of them, the guy who nearly hit Rachel, broke and muttered, "I didn't sign up for jail time." Barrows pointed at the open boxes on the lawn. "Who moved these?" No one answered. "Who moved these?" Karen tried one last time. "We were executing a lawful eviction. It's within HOA rights under Article 7.4 of the HOA," Barrows said sharply, "is not a law enforcement agency. You don't get to enforce rights with boots and threats." Then he turned to me. "Mr. Burns, you want to press charges?" I didn't hesitate. "Absolutely, and we're not stopping with trespassing. We're going all the way." Barrows nodded, reached for his notepad. "Then let's start the paperwork." The next morning, I stood in front of a blank wall in Lance's home office, staring at a growing flowchart of names, dates, and crimes that looked more like a cartel case than some HOA tantrum. He had taped printouts, maps, receipts, legal citations, even a string connecting Cypress Grove's official board minutes to a corporate shell based in Wilmington, North Carolina. "This isn't just overreach," he muttered, marker in hand. "This is a strategic assault. They tried to create jurisdiction retroactively and enforced it with force. Rachel brought me coffee, the good stuff, French press, but her hands were still shaking a little. She'd hardly slept. I'd hardly blinked. Neither of us wanted to leave the house, but Lance insisted we'd be safer coordinating the legal side from his place for a few hours, while Marcus's guys ran security sweeps back home. By mid-morning, Lance had finalized the filing. 2 lawsuits, 1 civil, 1 criminal. The civil case named Cypress Grove HOA as a corporate defendant and Karen Delmayer personally. Charges: unlawful entry, attempted unlawful eviction, emotional distress, property damage, coercion, and attempted child endangerment. The criminal referral, which had been passed directly to the county prosecutor's office, included criminal trespass, falsifying legal documents, impersonation of law enforcement, and suppression of an emergency alarm system through bribery. "Oh, and we added attempted extortion," Lance said, tapping a paragraph in the complaint. "Because the CPS threat? That's not just scary. That's leverage. Illegal leverage." I nodded, reading it over. "You think the DA will bite?" "I don't think he'll have a choice. Your footage, Rachel's video, the documents, the HOA payment trail, the fake incorporation map, and the kicker—" He tapped a still frame from the drone footage Evan had captured. Karen pointing at my wife, flanked by 2 beefy guys in fake badges, one of whom was carrying a collapsible baton. She used force and threat of force to attempt a seizure of property she had no claim to. That's not a zoning dispute. That's attempted home invasion dressed in khakis. Marcus texted me around lunchtime. "Power crew spotted on your road, supposedly fixing a leak. You authorize anything?" "Nope," I replied, already dialing the utility company. Turns out a work order had been submitted that morning, under my name, requesting a temporary service disconnection for maintenance. Safety reasons. The form said. I stared at the representative's email in disbelief. Who submitted this? A property manager on file, Cypress Grove HOA. The rage that surged through me was cold, surgical. They weren't done. Even after everything, Karen was still trying to make us miserable, this time by turning off our lights. Rachel looked at me across the table. "That's sabotage." "It's war," I corrected. Evan reviewed the footage from his drone for that time window and spotted something interesting. Across the street, our friendly new neighbor, Richard, could be seen standing on his porch, laptop open, occasionally pointing a strange antenna toward our house. "Probably nothing," Evan said. "But I'd bet $100 he was scanning your network." Rachel blinked. "Wait, he offered to help me fix the router 2 weeks ago." "You let him in?" "Only into the hallway. He said his signal was interfering with ours." "Signal," I repeated. "Right." We added Richard to the chart. Meanwhile, the press had started to circle. One of Evan's drone videos had gone viral overnight, posted by a local activist blogger with the caption, "HOA stormtroopers try to evict military family from their own home. Caught in 4K. 6 hours, 500,000 views. By the end of the day, the county sheriff's department issued a formal press release. We are actively investigating an incident involving the Cypress Grove Homeowners Association and the unauthorized entry into a private residence. Several individuals are being questioned. At this time, no arrests have been made. That part made my jaw tighten. No arrests? I muttered. They're moving carefully, Lance said. It's procedural. But it's coming. We'd also filed for an emergency injunction, restraining order against HOA interference with our property, including any service interruptions or contact. The judge signed it in under 2 hours. That night, back home, I installed new perimeter lights and a double encrypted smart lock system. Marcus posted one of his guys, full-time patrol until the hearings. At one point, I walked outside with a beer and looked across the street. Richard was on his porch again, smoking, watching. I lifted my bottle in a slow, deliberate salute. He raised his cigarette in return, didn't say a word, but his eyes didn't blink. I woke up to silence, not the peaceful kind you get before dawn, the wrong kind. No hum from the fridge, no buzz from the HVAC, no flicker of hallway nightlights. I rolled out of bed instantly, heart already picking up pace. Checked my phone, no signal, Wi-Fi, dead, cellular too. I stepped into the hallway. Rachel was already up, flashlight in hand. "Power's out," she said. "No shit," I muttered. Everything, even the security panel. It rebooted and never came back on. I threw on jeans, boots, and a flannel shirt, grabbed my sidearm from the safe, and headed outside. The generator I'd installed last year clicked on 2 minutes after the outage. Loud and efficient. Good old military surplus. I'd overpaid, but right now it felt like the best investment of my life. Lights came back. Fridge whirred. Surveillance system booted up. Then came Marcus's voice on the walkie. "Just got here. Your street's got utility trucks half a block down. They're unmarked. Company name? No decals, just orange vests. Want me to ask questions?" I didn't need to answer. He was already moving. By the time I got to the corner, 2 workers were hastily loading gear back into a white van. I recognized one of the vests, a contractor brand that did legitimate work in the area, but these guys looked too nervous, too fast. One of them dropped a clipboard and swore. The other jumped in the driver's seat and gunned it. Marcus caught the plate on camera. 10 minutes later, I was on the phone with the utility company. I gave them the incident report, plus the forged work order we'd requested earlier. They confirmed it again. Submitted through Cypress Grove Residential Oversight, with my name digitally signed. Only problem? I've never signed a goddamn thing, I said through clenched teeth. The form was submitted via HOA Administrator Portal, the tech explained. Encrypted login. It bypassed internal flagging. Meaning? Meaning someone with actual admin credentials pushed that form through. It looked legit until a human checked it. Rachel stood beside me in the kitchen, eyes fixed on the security monitor. "Check this out," she said, rewinding the outside camera feed from just before the blackout. At 2:38 a.m., our neighbor, Richard, stepped out of his house in a hoodie, carrying something under his arm. He walked to the edge of his driveway, crouched near the utility box, pulled out a device, some kind of signal jammer or transceiver, and stayed there for exactly 3 minutes. Then the power went out. Then he walked calmly back inside. Evan confirmed it later, said the device was probably a portable SDR, software-defined radio, used to spoof signals or knock out IoT-based systems like smart locks, thermostats, even cameras. "Military-grade stuff," he muttered. "Not off-the-shelf Home Depot junk." Marcus tracked the license plate from the van. It was registered to a cleaning company in Wilmington. No online presence, no tax filings. Total shell. Lance added the sabotage to our civil complaint, along with attempted obstruction of justice, cyber interference, and utility tampering. He also filed a separate brief requesting that Richard be placed under surveillance as a possible co-conspirator. Meanwhile, I decided it was time to send a message. I dragged an old Army surplus storage locker into the front yard, bolted it shut, painted on the side in big white letters, "Evidence locker, federal property, do not touch." Inside, I placed a waterproof case with copies of everything we'd gathered: drone footage, fake documents, the HOA fake work order, screenshots of Richard's activity, and a list of Karen's board-level decisions for the last 6 months. Then I mounted a GoPro to a pole overlooking the box, running 24/7. That night, I sat on the porch in full view, beer in one hand, binoculars in the other, watching Richard. He came out again around 11, smoked, watched me. This time I smiled, and he went back inside first. By Friday morning, the whole damn state seemed to know what happened on Cypress Ridge Lane. Our story hit the regional news cycle. Then it spread nationally. HOA attacks homeowner while he's away. Marine vet responds with legal shockwave. South Carolina family fights back against rogue HOA takeover. Illegal eviction. Civilian wife threatened while husband serves country. Rachel's phone was blowing up with reporters, parenting blogs, even veteran groups offering legal assistance. Lance shut most of it down. Smart move. But the story was out there, and Karen knew it. So did her board. Late that afternoon, we received a packet hand-delivered by courier. Inside, a cease and desist letter from Karen's own HOA attorney. It accused us of defamation, harassment, psychological intimidation, and deliberate use of media to cause reputational damage. Lance laughed so hard he almost dropped the thing in his soup. "We'll frame it," he said. Nice addition to the evidence locker. That same evening, the county sheriff's office officially opened a criminal case. Karen and her officers were called in for questioning, and for the first time in 2 weeks, I felt something resembling momentum. Then Richard vanished. Gone. Marcus drove by Saturday morning to find his car missing. House dark, no movement. Lease contract fake. Property management company listed as owner. Dissolved 6 months ago. His tech company. Shell site, no contact info. Evan checked the drone logs. Richard had packed up and driven out at 2 hours and 13 minutes the night the fake utility crew hit. Planned, clean, military precision. I had to admit, part of me admired the professionalism. The other part wanted to personally shove a subpoena into whatever hole he crawled into. But the real chaos was happening over in Cypress Grove. Within 48 hours of the sheriff's announcement, 2 members of the HOA board resigned. One left the state. Another issued a bizarre video apology on Facebook, claiming she had no idea Karen was going that far. Then came the leaks. Lance's contact at the clerk's office got us access to emails from HOA meeting records, obtained via subpoena. There it was, in black and white. Karen, we cannot afford to let this family refuse integration. If they resist, we'll force jurisdiction by community necessity. A soft eviction is preferable, but if it comes to firm action, I want it done before he returns from deployment. Not might. Not request. I want it done. Another message from a board member asked about the legality. Karen, this isn't covered under expansion code. The property is outside our district. They opted out in 2018. Karen's response, they won't fight it. The wife won't know what to do. He'll be too late. Rachel read that one 3 times. Then she folded the paper and quietly walked outside for air. That night, Evan joined us for dinner. Steak, whiskey, fire pit. He said, "You know she's trying to salvage this by shifting blame. She's going to say the board acted independently." "She is the board," I replied. "And when that fails," he said, sipping his drink, "she'll try to throw the security officers under the bus." I smirked. Let her try. One of them already reached out. That was true. The buzz cut guy, name was Daniel Sutter, had contacted Lance the day before. Said he wanted to make a deal. Said he had communications, recordings, and receipts proving Karen orchestrated everything, down to the threat to call CPS. He says she offered him a bonus if he could encourage Rachel to leave peacefully, but that if she didn't, he had authority to escalate. Escalate? Evan raised an eyebrow. He claims those were her exact words, and that he asked twice what that meant. She never answered. Sunday, we got a call from the county prosecutor's office. Karen was being charged with multiple counts: criminal trespass, falsifying municipal records, obstruction of emergency services, attempted unlawful eviction, and conspiracy to intimidate a federal contractor's family. But the biggest blow, they added a count of intentional emotional distress of a minor. The judge signed the arrest warrant that afternoon. They picked her up at her home, mid-garden party, in front of a dozen HOA members and 2 news crews. The footage was glorious. She tried to smile for the cameras. It didn't last. The courtroom was cold, clinical, and smelled faintly of floor polish and stale coffee. The kind of place where justice happens slowly but irrevocably. I sat next to Rachel, dressed in my best dark suit, not for show, but for armor. Her hand trembled slightly in mine. Across the aisle, Karen Delmayer sat behind her counsel, wearing an expensive gray blazer, hair styled into a corporate helmet, face frozen in something halfway between confidence and contempt. She still thought she could win this, thought the system was like her HOA, manipulable. The judge, a no-nonsense former prosecutor named Harnisher Valerie McIntyre, entered the room with a sharp nod and sat with the kind of posture that told you she wasn't impressed by theatrics. Lance opened for us, methodical and direct. He laid out the sequence. My wife and children forcibly intimidated inside our home by unauthorized agents, use of fabricated documents to justify entry, subversion of emergency services, a campaign of psychological pressure, including threats involving Child Protective Services, and a final damning detail, sabotage of engineering systems through illegal access and probable coordination with a known tech operative acting under false identity. He presented video from Evan's drone, Rachel's phone footage, audio of Karen giving operational orders, and, for dramatic flourish, the forged utility work order signed with a forged digital signature. Karen's defense tried to claim miscommunication, well-intentioned enforcement, and unofficial community protection protocols. That's when Lance dropped the email from Karen's internal board communication. They won't fight it. The wife won't know what to do. He'll be too late. The courtroom shifted. Even her lawyer winced. But the real moment came when the prosecutor asked the court for something rare. We request, with your Honor's permission, that the defendant submit to a voluntary polygraph to clarify the scope of her coordination in events beyond what has been admitted to date. Her attorney objected. McIntyre raised an eyebrow. If she's confident, it should present no issue. It is voluntary, but I will take her refusal into consideration when assessing credibility. Karen accepted. Big mistake. They brought the polygraph machine into the side room. Media were kept out, but I was allowed to observe through one-way glass with the prosecutor and judge. She sat down, wired up, stone-faced. The examiner began. Did you know the Burns family residence was not part of the Cypress Grove HOA at the time of your enforcement action? Yes. Needles spiked. Did you authorize the use of force or threats to remove them? No. Needles spiked hard. Did you personally request tampering with their utilities or surveillance systems? No. Another spike. Bigger. Karen's lips tightened, but she kept her eyes forward. Were you in communication with the individual known as Richard Carmine prior to the incident? A pause. Then, no. Needle jumped like it had hit a mine. The examiner looked up slowly. Test complete. We returned to the courtroom. The prosecutor submitted the results with a calm, deliberate voice. The defendant lied in response to every material question. Karen's lawyer stood up, desperate now. My client believed she was acting within the boundaries of expanded community enforcement. She lied about sabotage, about jurisdiction, and about planning the incident in advance. The judge snapped. That's not confusion. That's orchestration. The courtroom fell silent. Then Jeremy, my neighbor, stood up in the back. She told us the Burns were squatters, that they were running an Airbnb. She convinced 3 board members to sign off on a security sweep, said there was drug activity. Gasps. McIntyre turned to the prosecutor. Proceed. We didn't even need the closing argument. It was over. The judge delivered her ruling the next morning. Karen Delmayer, found guilty on multiple felony counts. Criminal trespass, document forgery, sabotage of essential services, conspiracy to commit intimidation, filing false emergency claims, attempted unlawful seizure of property. She was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison. No parole eligibility for at least 6. The court also ruled in our favor on the civil side, $800,000 in damages against the HOA, of which $300,000 to be paid directly to us. HOA to be dissolved as a legal entity pending state review. All related parties barred from serving on any HOA board in the state of South Carolina for 10 years. Karen didn't even flinch as the bailiff cuffed her. She still thought she'd walk out one day and reclaim her little kingdom. Let her dream. A month after the trial, the house was finally quiet again. Not the eerie kind of quiet we'd felt when everything started unraveling. This was different, calmer, earned. Like the house itself was exhaling after holding its breath for too long. We'd repainted the front door, replaced the cracked porch railing, cleaned the last of the dirt Rachel's photo albums had picked up when some wannabe enforcer threw them onto the lawn. The only thing we hadn't fixed was the mailbox. I left it dented, on purpose. A small scar that reminded us where we'd been and what we'd won. Rachel was in the garden with the kids. They'd replanted the flower bed Karen trampled the day she stormed in. Now it was brighter, full of wild sunflowers and defiant little marigolds. My daughter called them resistance blossoms. Marcus's security guys were gone, but the cameras remained. Upgraded, fortified, integrated into a private cloud with backups in 3 states. Evan installed them himself and made sure our new system had thermal, LiDAR, and motion-triggered audio. Just in case she has pen pals, he joked. Lance had gone back to his semi-retirement, but not before he helped push a state-level bill through the pipeline, one that would impose strict limits on HOA authority, require judicial review for any eviction-related enforcement, and mandate transparency of all HOA board finances. He named the bill the Burns Protection Clause. I told him that was ridiculous. Then I bought him a bottle of whiskey anyway. As for Karen, she was behind bars at the state detention facility in Colombia. Her mugshot made the rounds for a while. Expressionless, stiff, too proud to look broken. The media dropped her after a few weeks. Just another local tyrant brought down. Cypress Grove HOA, gone. Disbanded. What remained of its board was now in arbitration, clawing at each other for indemnity protection. The neighborhood had turned on itself like a nest of rats once the food ran out. The property across the street, the one Richard used, went up for auction. No one touched it. Too many questions. Too many shadows. I heard whispers that Richard wasn't even his real name, that he'd worked for private infrastructure firms in the past. I didn't push. Some ghosts are best left unfollowed. What mattered was that Rachel smiled again. The kids slept through the night. The house was ours, not just on paper, but in spirit. I added one more thing, a sign. I mounted it beside the front gate, hand-carved from red oak, lacquered against the elements. It read, "Private property not part of HOA trespassers will face federal response," and beneath it, in smaller letters, "Knock if you're friendly. We've got beer." A few weeks later, a local news crew asked if I'd give a short interview. Inspirational story, homeowner triumphs against oppression kind of thing. They showed up with cameras, microphones, bright-eyed interns. I stood on the porch, looking out at the hills behind the property, the flag gently waving off the pole by the driveway. They asked how I felt now that it was all over. I thought for a moment. Then I said, "I've served in Iraq, Afghanistan, Lebanon. I've watched cities burn from the inside, but I never thought the place I'd have to defend my family would be a quiet neighborhood from a woman in a blazer holding a clipboard." But she made a mistake. She thought I was just another name on a mailbox.